Sonic Adventure 2. What can I say about this game that hasn't already been said hundreds of times? Well, no one before today could say that the game's 20 years old, so there's something, and that's actually a really big deal. I cannot believe this game came out 20 years ago. A Sonic game was last released for a Sega system 2 decades ago. A whole score ago, if you will. That's just crazy, and I couldn't let the occasion go by without making a big deal of it because of how important this game was to me growing up. Sonic Adventure 2 and I were the best of friends. I got the game when I was probably 10 years old and consistently played it throughout middle school. Yeah, I played the game way too much. Now, I played the game on GameCube because, let's be honest, how many kids in the 2010s had a Dreamcast lying around, so I've never actually experienced the game as it was intended to be played. As a 20 years later video, I figured it would only be proper if I played the game on the OG hardware, so I shelled out the absurd amount of money required to buy this game on the Dreamcast. I know it's not the best version for the sake of footage, but I really want an authentic experience with Sonic Adventure 2 for the first time to really dive in and dissect the game, so let's get going. Normally, I would attempt to fully cover a game in one way or another when discussing it, but I think the market for that kind of video about Sonic Adventure 2 is far too oversaturated as it is. I'm not going to cover the entirety of the plot, nor discuss every gameplay style in depth and analyze the game as a whole. Instead, I'm going to share my opinions on these things quite briefly, assuming you've heard it all before, then discuss a lot of the main differences I noticed between the OG Dreamcast version and the updated battle version that most people played. And I'm going to finish things off with comparing the game to those in the series that have come out since, and explain why I'd love to see a return to this adventure style of Sonic game. Once again, those are all timestamps, so feel free to jump around and watch what you'd like. Starting with the story, I think it's really good. It's not the most entertaining plot in the world, but it more than suffices for this game. It can take itself too seriously at times, but there's a lot of stupidity within it, and those moments honestly make me laugh. Whether or not they were intended to be there, they make it feel more lighthearted and balance things out, so I'm glad they're there. My favorite moment in the story has got to be this iconic clip.
You thought you could trick me with that fake emblem, didn't you?
So, how did you know it wasn't the real one?
Tails! Because you just told me, Fox Boy.
This is actually kinda interesting. Tails is always made out to be smarter than Sonic, but here, Sonic clearly knows this is a setup and Tails falls for it. It's so good though, and just look at the look of disbelief on Tails' face. It's too good. The dialogue throughout the game is very well written. Now, the timing of each line isn't always great, and don't even get me started on the music volume in cutscenes, but that's due to poor editing, not poor writing. And all the characters' personalities are captured flawlessly in the game, especially Sonic's. This is really the perfect representation of Sonic the Hedgehog's character. He's cocky, he's cool, he's got edge. I love this iteration of the character, and Ryan Drummond does a killer job at voicing him in this game.
Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better.
There is so much attitude and character in every word, and it makes it very easy for me to say that this is the best version of modern Sonic we've seen, at least so far. I know you think that's entirely based on nostalgia, and that is a contributing factor, but name a modern Sonic game that handles his character better. I'll wait. The only two that stand a chance against SA2 would be the first adventure game and Sonic Unleashed. The original Sonic Adventure had a great version of the character and really had its moments, but SA2 simply expanded and improved upon its predecessor. And Unleashed is super good too, but I feel his character became more chilled out in that game. That's really when the radical Sonic died and the more cool and chill Sonic took his place. It's very well written for that Sonic, but that's not my preferred emphasized personality. And plus, there's a different voice actor, so no. Everyone's got a different preference when it comes to Sonic's writing though, so if you prefer certain games, I encourage you to drop a comment and share with me. While you're doing that, let's talk about music, and holy Sonic Adventure 2's soundtrack is phenomenal. Now, unpopular opinion, I think the original Sonic Adventure has the better soundtrack. I really thought I preferred this game's, but as I was listing notable songs, I realized there's a lot less of them. Do not get me wrong though, this is an amazing soundtrack, and the main vocal theme, Live and Learn, is by far superior to Open Your Heart. Other notable tracks would include It Doesn't Matter, Prison Lane, Metal Harbor, Pumpkin Hill, and the one and only City Escape. I don't know, I just had an easier time listing songs in the original game. There's so many bops and incredible tracks that I just barely give it the edge. Now on to the gameplay styles. Sonic and Shadows are the most fun, then Tails and Eggman, and finally Knuckles and Rouge. Sonic's levels are so amazing. They took what Sonic Adventure did with levels and ran with it, but made them just a bit more linear. Where the original usually had tons of alternate routes, Adventure 2 limits it to just a few shortcuts here and there with a more linear main path, which I actually prefer. This main path is way more polished and makes it easier to zoom through levels, occasionally taking shortcuts as you learn them to get through even faster. And the ranking system in SA2 is perhaps the most underappreciated addition in the series.
That was cool!
They provide huge incentive to replay levels and look for those faster routes, which is super important. Now instead of just going through them faster for the hell of it, you've got an A ranking to work for, which is awesome. And they're actually tough to get.
Barely made it.
In more recent games in the series, you can get an A or S rank on your first run through a stage, but here you've got to work for it. The rankings are present in the other types of gameplay too, but they aren't as enticing there, as the mech levels are super slow and you build your score through blasting away enemies, and the treasure hunting levels are entirely dependent on emerald placement. While they do add replayability to levels, I don't even think the Sonic levels that benefited from it most really needed it. Their crazy fun and fast-paced designs do an amazing job at pulling players in for another go. I love these levels, but that's only 1/3 of the gameplay, so let's move on to the Tails and Dr. Eggman levels, which are pretty good. Being able to play as Dr. Eggman for the first time was incredible, and I'm totally cool with him being in his mech, but why is Tails in one? I get that they wanted to have the hero and dark stories have the same 3 types of gameplay, but it's still kinda stupid. I really liked the Tails levels in the original Sonic Adventure, and the fact that they were replaced with this is a major bummer. His levels are notably worse than Eggman's in design, too. You can definitely tell these were an afterthought, but neither of them are bad by any means. These levels are slower moving, and the challenge comes from trying to lock onto and chain kill as many enemies as possible, and when you accept that type of gameplay for what it is, it's fun. I never look forward to them, but I far prefer them to the Knuckles and Rouge levels. Yeah, these kinda suck. I like the Knuckles levels in the original Sonic Adventure, but they changed the radar to only show 1 emerald at a time, and that can really make these levels take longer. They have these hint boxes that do come in handy, but it's still hard to find the emeralds a lot of the time. Also, a lot of the areas you have to explore suck. The first 2 are super fun, but after Pumpkin Hill, they get bigger and much more challenging. The aquatic mine has tons of water and swimming and is a pain to get through, but the worst one by far is the space one. This one is massive and the hint's too close to nothing. Near a lot of meteors, well that really narrows it down. How was I supposed to know to fly out here and smash this meteorite? Come on, this sucks. It took me way too long. Now, some of the emerald locations are probably easier to spot, but even when I died and tried to get one in the new location, it put it in the same spot and really pissed me off. I really don't like these levels. I'm sure the later Knuckles levels in the original Sonic Adventure would have annoyed me too, but the cool thing about that game was the fact that you didn't have to play them all to play more Sonic levels. It split the gameplay styles into each character's story mode, which was great. You could play all the Sonic levels and a little bit of the others until you got annoyed with them and decided to stop or beat it. This approach was way better in my opinion, but I see why they chose to do it this way. Being able to experience the entirety of the plot with only 2 story modes is way easier than having to play through 6 individual story modes to get the full experience. It makes the story more enjoyable because the events don't repeat as much, but it comes at the cost of a more consistent gameplay experience, which I would have preferred. This isn't that big a deal though, because all the gameplay styles are at the very least tolerable, and at least they did a good job of spacing out the levels. When you get annoyed with the slow and sometimes boring Knuckles gameplay, you're thrown into a fast-paced and action-packed Sonic stage. Shuffling the gameplay styles around works pretty well to keep the experience fresh and makes you really appreciate the few Sonic stages there are. A problem with the more recent Sonic games is the lack of these other gameplay styles. While they're by no means selling points or groundbreakingly fun when they are there, they take some pressure off the Sonic stages. Designing a ton of stages for a single gameplay style leaves a lot of them feeling uninspired and bland. The devs will run out of ideas pretty quick and we'll be left with a bunch of lackluster levels. This is the problem with Sonic Forces. There's too many modern Sonic stages and they all feel straightforward and similar. The Sonic Adventure approach limits the amount of levels there are and in turn allows each one to have more interesting and creative designs, which makes the game overall more memorable, replayable, and fun. These alternative gameplay styles do some of the heavy lifting for the game and allow there to be less focus on just the Sonic stuff. Then when the main game is all finished up, it leaves the player wanting to go back and replay the Sonic stages, and the ranking system in Chao Garden only further encourage it. We'll talk more about the Chao Garden later, but I now want to talk about my first experience with the Dreamcast version of the game and how it compares to Adventure 2 Battle. So the biggest difference for me was obviously the controller, and it was super cool to experience the game with the controller was designed to be played with, but I personally much prefer the GameCube controller for the game. That's mostly because A, it's my favorite video game controller of all time, and B, it's what I grew up playing the game on. But the stick is just so much nicer on the GameCube, and my finger kept slipping off the plastic grip of the Dreamcast stick. The stick was the biggest discomfort, and it wasn't even that bad. It doesn't feel all that different from playing with a GameCube controller. And I love all the art that's displayed on the Dreamcast VMU while you play. It isn't much, but it's a really nice touch. I know that visually the game is lacking compared to the Battle version, but I really didn't notice all that much. Side by side you can tell it's off a little bit, but it's not apparent while playing whatsoever. It is a bit blurrier, but that's because I have my Dreamcast hooked up to my capture card through composite, as opposed to Battle being run through my GameCube's Carbide 2.0 and being captured in a crisp 480p. I always thought Adventure 2 Battle added multiplayer to the game, but I guess it only adds to it. There's some new abilities, upgrades, stages, and characters, but they took out Big the Cat, what the hell? Even if he isn't playable though, this dude's everywhere throughout the game. Seriously, he's running from the gun truck with you, rotting in a prison cell for what I could only assume to be tax evasion, here he is underwater, hanging from a blimp, and just vibing in space. I actually much prefer these little Easter eggs to his gameplay in Sonic Adventure. I love just randomly coming across him in different levels, it's hilarious. Anyways, instead of Big, you get a Dark Chao, which is not a fair trade-off. I hate Big the Cat, but I love using him in multiplayer. I didn't even know he was playable because I never played the original version, but that's actually really cool. He's not available to play as from the start though. You have to A-rank every Dr. Eggman stage to unlock him, which I normally wouldn't do, but since there's no footage or evidence of this anywhere online, I had to grind it out to make sure it was real and get the footage. I know you're getting ready to type, but Jeremy, there's only 5 Dr. Eggman levels and most of them take like 5 minutes to beat, so even with some trial and error that shouldn't take more than an hour. And you'd be right, I even had the super long one A-ranked already already, so the other 4 took me like a half an hour. But that's not all you have to do. You see, those stages you play during the story mode are only the first mission of each level, so if I wanted to A rank every level, I'd need to beat all 5 of them for each stage. This is ridiculous! Now, the missions themselves are a welcome addition and provide much more to do in the game, but these should not be required to unlock characters in some crappy multiplayer mode. Of the 4 other missions, 2 require you to beat the level again, once as a time trial and once on hard mode, 1 requires you to collect 100 rings, and the other one has you searching for some hidden Chao. So take that hour to A rank the first mission, add 2 more for the time trials and hard mode, a half an hour for finding the Chao, and another for the 100 ring missions, and you're looking at 4 hours of grinding just to play as Big the Cat. I get that it's totally optional and it's for some bonus character in multiplayer, which none of you out there are going to go out and do, but the fact that it takes so much to unlock such a tiny thing is what pisses me off the most. The battle version doesn't do this though. You can play as all the characters in multiplayer as soon as you unlock the mode itself, and while Big isn't playable, the rest of the characters are, and it takes away the headache of unlocking them all. But that's not even the worst thing. There's a really awesome looking version of Green Hill Zone that you can unlock, but only if you A rank every single mission in the entire game. This is bogus. I want to play the stage so badly, but I am not 100%ing the game. Great reward for completionists, but it sucks that the majority of people won't get to play the stage. Sorry for this long side tangent, but it took me almost 5 hours to finally A rank all the Eggman stages, and I wanted to make sure you're aware of the fact that you can't just buy the Dreamcast version and play as Big. And also because I wanted to flex with this Big the Cat footage, since I couldn't find any evidence of it online and I'm the first to show it off. Seriously, it says on Wikipedia that you can play as him and has page 21 of the Sonic Adventure 2 battle manual cited, and yet no, there's no mention of Big the Cat there. Even the OG SA2 manual doesn't mention him. The Sonic fandom website has some artwork of it, but it wasn't even a screenshot, and all it said was how you could unlock him. I had to do it myself to know for sure if this was legit, but after doing it, was it worth all the grinding? Probably not. But back to the multiplayer, I don't see it as a selling point whatsoever, but it's pretty fun from what I played, though I'll probably never go back and play more. Battle is supposed to have the definitive multiplayer, but not much of anything is different, and the experience you get is basically the same. The thing that got me most excited about playing on Dreamcast was the fact that I could actually take my Chao with me on the VMU, because I don't have a GBA or link cable to do it in SA2 Battle. The GBA lets you transfer your Chao to a tiny garden in Sonic Advance, which allows for much more interaction with your Chao than the VMU does, but this way is way more accessible while lacking in features. With the VMU, you can only do basic stuff, and it's pretty similar to what the Chao Garden offered in the original Sonic Adventure. Something kinda weird I figured I'd point out is the fact that my Chao Garden isn't working right on Dreamcast. Every time I go to enter the garden, it says failed to load, and I don't know why. I hatched a Chao and gave it some animals, but when I returned it was an egg. I managed to get one onto the VMU with Chao Adventure 2 for the sake of seeing what that was like, but I really don't know why it isn't working. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle has saved all my Chao data since when I was 10, which I'm very thankful for, but it sucks I won't be able to play it on Dreamcast. If any of you out there have experienced a similar issue and you know how to fix it, please let me know in the comments. Back to what I was saying earlier, the only difference between the Dreamcast and Battle version of SA2 are some small things in multiplayer, a more advanced portable Chao Garden, and slightly nicer visuals. It's not much at all, and if you've played one version, you've played the other. Okay, enough about the game itself. Let's talk about how it compares to the 2 decades of games that followed it. We're gonna address the elephant in the room to start. Is the game the best modern Sonic game? Well, in my opinion, it just might be. It's better than Adventure and improved upon it in countless ways and is way more solid overall, and it's obviously better than Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06. Sonic Heroes is a fun game, but it doesn't quite do it for me. Lost World has fresh and fun gameplay, but the majority of it is 2D and the rest of the game is as generic as can be. Forces is way too uninspired and boring, and that leaves Unleashed, Colors, and Generations. I'm leaving out spin-off games and handheld games. We're talking about the console stuff, so don't spam me in the comments about how I missed Secret Rings or Sonic Advance. No, I didn't miss them. I'm just not counting them. Colors and Generations have potentially the most fun gameplay and levels in the series, but the story and writing is so bad that I can't stand to watch any of the cutscenes. It's worse in Generations, but neither is very good. And that's not to say I'm not excited about Sonic Colors Ultimate coming out. I'm so excited to play that game and relive my childhood. Anyways, Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Adventure 2 are probably the most well-rounded and quality games in the modern era, but I give the edge to Sonic Adventure 2 because I'd take the Tails and Knuckles levels over the Werehog any day. That was a lot of hot takes in an incredibly short amount of time, so I'll give you a moment to cool off. You good? Okay, those are all my opinions, and that's totally alright if your opinion is different. I just thought it would be fun to kind of walk through each game and determine if Adventure 2 really is my favorite. But be sure to drop your favorite down in the comments, and maybe include a quick reason as to why that is. With all of that said and the majority of the game covered, we're finally going to talk about the potential return to the Sonic Adventure style and why I, along with many others, would love to see it. The main reason the Sonic Adventure games are looked back upon so fondly is quite simple: the Chao Garden. Chao are stupid fun to raise, and to raise them you need animals and capsules from levels, so in order to level up your Chao you'll need to replay a lot of the game. It works so well because Chao are optional. You didn't have to replay a ton of stuff to complete the game. You could replay it if you wanted your virtual pet to level up and perform better in races. When we went back to play levels, we didn't revisit Meteor, Herd, or Eternal Engine, we revisited City Escape. We went back and played the super fun levels that we could fly through, and playing these amazing levels reinforced the idea that this game is stellar and a blast to play, when in actuality, playing through the story can be quite the opposite at times. The experience as a whole is a mixed bag, but both the Chao Garden and level ranks provide massive incentive to go back and play your favorite levels again, which makes good memories of the game ingrain themselves in our minds and block out the negative ones. Going back to the adventure style isn't going to magically fix Sonic the Hedgehog, because these games aren't anything close to perfect. But giving Sonic's friends gameplay styles again, as opposed to different forms of Sonic, would be a great move, as it would give each game way more variety and allow them to create fully unique and enjoyable levels for Sonic. Modern Sonic as of right now is feeling very burnt out, and these 3D entries really need a rebirth like classic Sonic got in Sonic Mania. This game is beautiful, and it doesn't just emulate classic Sonic, it is classic Sonic, and the design of each and every stage is flawless and probably better than those original games. They were crafted by fans of those classic games, and I think modern Sonic needs the exact same thing. People who grew up with these adventure games are getting to an age where they can help create future games, and if Sonic Team got some of these young and fresh minds to help create a brand new adventure game, it would far exceed expectations, no doubt. I know we got that little teaser trailer in that Sonic presentation a couple weeks ago, but that really didn't show much of anything, and I really hope that's not just another Sonic Forces. Please. Guys, this year is Sonic's 30th anniversary. It's a huge deal, but they're not really making a big deal out of it. We got the Sonic movie last year, that was pretty good, but there's been close to nothing since. I know that presentation was exciting, but besides some sweet looking Sonic statues and a Sonic Colors port, we didn't get much. Sure, that teaser got me pumped, but it said close to nothing. Like, what is there to say? Sonic's running, holy shit! Really though, we as a community need to spread some love for the Blue Blur, because we all know Sega won't. So let's start by celebrating the fact that Sonic Adventure 2 turns 20 today. Playing it again for this video was great. It's not as good as I remember it being, but it only reminded me of how much potential the series has. I really want a Sonic Adventure 3, now more than ever, but if that's never gonna happen, at least add Dr. Eggman to Smash Bros. Please. Hey, thank you so very much for watching this video. If you like what you see, leave a like, and if you want to see more and help the channel grow, you should definitely subscribe. If you want to see more videos like the one you just watched, check out my Sonic videos playlist. There's tons of similar stuff in there, including my in-depth look at Sonic Adventure, so be sure to check it out. Thanks again, I'll see you later.